Right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the DiveBomb Power Rankings monthly podcast with myself, Dan Jones, and I'm joined again by Owen Bradley and Ollie Radley. Say hello again, lads.
How are we?
Hi, how's it going, guys?
And what a month of motorsport. We just had the iconic month of May. 3 F1 races, including the inaugural Miami Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix, and of course the Indianapolis 500, alongside loads of F2. We've had NASCAR, we've had World Rally Championship, we've had MotoGP. We have had everything this month. So what a month it is to review and look at our top 10. Right, it's time to have a monthly recap, and we're going to kick off with the F1. And we started off with the Miami Grand Prix, the first event, and it was a bit of a crazy event at that. It was a Max Verstappen win to gain his third win of the season. And it was only from P3 of the grid. We saw he made a slight mistake on quali after getting a bit over the curbs after he had quite a disrupted practice with loads of mechanical failures, which put him on the back foot. But it was still an impressive performance by Verstappen this weekend to gain another win, particularly in the close championship battle against Charles Leclerc. And talking with Charles Leclerc, only P2 this weekend. He obviously secured pole position on the Saturday with a Ferrari front row alongside teammate Carlos Sainz. But Verstappen got him on lap 9 into turn 1, and after that it was fairly processional. Leclerc didn't look like he had the pace to catch Verstappen, and it was a good performance from Verstappen, who gained the first race win in Miami.
Yeah, as Dan mentioned there, Max got Sainz fairly straight away, and Carlos from P2 it was probably his only decent race of the month, wasn't it? Finished P3 from P2. Should have really finished 4th behind Perez, but got a little bit lucky with an engine issue for Perez that lost him something like 8 seconds. So 2 pretty standard performances from those two. Sainz has been struggling so far this season, but a pretty standard race for him there. Not too bad, but nothing amazing either. Another man with a solid showing, Alex Albon, P9 in Miami. He's just accumulating decent points finishes here and there. That Australia strategy obviously was absolutely incredible, taking the Haas all but 1 lap in that race. And yeah, another 2 points to his tally in Miami. Talking Miami, what did we think of the event, boys?
I mean, it was certainly an interesting one. It's a bit of a glitz and glamour event. It was kind of a Monaco type style event of loads of celebrities and loads of social media interaction and marketing for the race. It was quite the scene. The race itself was an okay one. I wouldn't say it was the best race we've had so far this season. I wouldn't say it's the worst either. But yeah, they've really tried to hype up this event and share it about and get loads of celebrities on. It was quite an event to see.
I'm going to be honest. I actually hated the whole event. Really,
Wow.
I thought the race was boring, and just that grid walk by Martin Brundle. I mean, it was entertaining, but it was also so cringe just watching all these celebrities.
It was fairly iconic for him getting the celebrities mixed up. But you think, do we need these celebrities? Like, why are we having random celebrities on Formula One grid before a race? Like, are they really that necessary? I personally don't see the point in them, but don't know about you guys.
No. Every time Martin Brundle was speaking to someone, they just were promoting whoever they were with. It wasn't. They don't know.
Richard
I
Mill.
don't think anything. Yeah. Oh my lord, that was. Oh.
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, the circuit itself with the fake harbour and all this ridiculous stuff they brought in, it was a bit over the top, I can't lie. It almost feels like they tried to force this event. It ended up being a bit of a ridiculous outcome. I think it was way too over the top for my liking. The circuit itself, I think, is okay. I wouldn't say it's an amazing track. Obviously, there's that really terrible, pitiful chicane, which you just look at it, you're like, why is it there? It adds of no value at all. And yeah, the circuit's okay. It's got a few long straights, decent for overtaking, but it isn't anything particularly amazing in my opinion.
You know, I wonder if once the new game comes out, that's when a lot of fans will understand the track more, the layout, where you can overtake. Because I think when Baku was added into F1 in 2016, I definitely spent a lot of hours playing that, and I found the track to be much more interesting once you can explore it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Baku 2016, the race wasn't particularly amazing. Obviously, in the last 5, 6 years, it's hosted some of the best races we've seen in F1. I can't see Miami being the same. It all seems a bit forced, a bit unnatural, but we'll see. There's obviously a very long straight and 3 DRS zones. You never know, could be good for racing in future years. But Formula One are really pushing this kind of as their main event, it seems. The marketing for this event was extreme. They really want to push this as their major event. So, yeah.
Moving on to Spain, then, for Spain. This was an exceptional race, I thought. We had Max Verstappen's turn 4 hiccup, as I like to call it, or a little spin off into the gravel. He was feeling adventurous, and somehow he came back to actually win the Grand Prix, mainly because of Charles Leclerc's engine giving way midway through the race, which was devastating to watch. And of course, Sergio Perez jumped right out of the way so that Max could get the win. Guys, what do we think about that? It was quite early for it. We're only 5, 6 races into the season, and Red Bull already deploying the team orders.
I mean, I can personally see why they did it. Verstappen was on much fresher tyres. He was on the better strategy. There was no point holding each other up in the battle. They probably could have let them fight. Verstappen would have got past anyway. I guess it angers people that we want to see a natural fight where you don't want it to be forced this early on, as early as round 6. But for me, I can see why Red Bull did it. It's probably not an ideal scenario, but I can see why they did it.
I think the worst bit is Red Bull like to deny that they haven't got a number 1, number 2 driver, but after 6 rounds you're already ordering drivers to swap. It does suggest that there's a bit of favour towards one driver. I mean, obviously we know for years there's been a lot of love in Verstappen's direction and not so much to his teammate. But especially in hindsight now with Checo only 15 points behind in the championship, you just think, well, the championship says otherwise, so why should they be treating drivers like they're 1 and 2?
I think when you have a driver like Max Verstappen in your team, when you sign a second driver, they will be under the impression that Max is the main man here. I'm here to gain second in the championship. I'm not going to be fighting with Max. But when you have a driver, Sergio Perez is by no means a slouch of a driver. He is a fantastic driver in his own right. Is he good enough for a championship? Well, I don't see why he shouldn't be able to show that. And I think, especially in the early rounds of the season, it is important to see what Perez can do. Without doubt, he has been much closer than Verstappen than he was last year. So we need to see what he can do in a championship fight. If he isn't as good towards the end of the season, I think you do need to focus all your priorities towards Max. But when you are so early on in the season, you have so many choices to do. I think you should give both drivers an equal chance to win the world title. Talking of Spain, last point we need to make is Lewis Hamilton. We obviously saw he had a bit of a collision with Kevin Magnussen on lap 1. I think we're all agreed that as a racing incident, Hamilton understood. Magnussen went for an opportunity, which he was entitled to do. Racing incident, nothing more than that. But his comeback was impressive. So he had a puncture right at the back of the field, but he managed to climb his way up to P5, and it could have easily been P4 if he didn't have cooling issues on the last couple of laps. But it does kind of show the signs of a Mercedes resurgence. We obviously haven't been seeing them at the front like we're also used to seeing them there. But it was a good performance. Does it show signs of Mercedes becoming competitive? Probably not so as we saw in Monaco. But the signs are encouraging. On a good day, Mercedes probably could challenge for a podium. Hamilton said he thinks he could have challenged for the win. So obviously, we won't know what he could have done in Spain, but it was really encouraging for Mercedes to see Hamilton back to his very best.
We've all been kind of saying that the Miami race was a good event, but not so much a great race. Its European counterpart, the obviously iconic Monaco, was affected by rain, the first time since 2016, although this time heavy rain. At first, we thought that was the cause of a delayed start, although the FIA have since pointed out that it was a power outage. which prevented the light sequence from taking place. But despite that, there were still further delays due to the rain. What do we think, boys, of the FIA's caution when it came to the rain?
I'm going to be honest. A lot of people were campaigning to get Michael Massey fired at the end of last season, and I completely understand that. But the way the new FIA have handled this season, I think has been just as bad, to be honest. And this is concrete proof of that.
I think they could have got going earlier. I kind of think the first red flag was a bit forced. They didn't really see the conditions properly. And, well, obviously we had a power outage. We don't really understand the full detail to that. But I think the most challenging track on the calendar in the most challenging conditions would have been incredible to see. But this constant delay of rain races, we saw this in Spa last year as well. And that's what caused the problems. They didn't start on time. It kind of disappoints me a bit. I want to see drivers in the most challenging conditions there possibly is, because what's kind of happening is we go on the safety car for so long that it's already comfortably into conditions and we're already looking at dries. We don't see enough wet running, and the wet running is really where you separate the brilliant drivers and the average drivers. And I kind of want to see more wet running under the new race directors. I don't really like this constant delay of wet weather races.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, you look at Monaco 1984 and the conditions they were racing in was absolutely crazy. That was obviously, for people that don't know, that was Senna's first podium with the Tolman team. And obviously, I think only about 8 cars or so finished that race. So maybe not having them out in those conditions. But yeah, there was a point in the race where there didn't even seem like there was much water at all, and they were still delaying it. It was very strange.
Yeah, rather bizarre start to the race, but once we got going, it was still a very interesting race, and it ended up with a Sergio Perez victory, the third victory of his career to become the most successful Mexican driver in Formula One. It was a good win. He got on the right strategy, and even though his tyres looked a bit sketchy towards the end, he held off his position and gained a victory in Monaco, the most elusive F1 race of them all. Carlos Sainz, he finished second for the second consecutive year in a row in the Principality. Looked like he was going to challenge Perez. Looks like he got held up by Latifi on his outlap when he changed onto dries, which could have potentially affected his race. We don't really know. And Max Verstappen finished third to end his weird streak of winning every race he'd finished this season. And his other streak of not finishing third. He was allergic to third, hadn't finished there since Portugal 2020, but he is back on the third step of the podium. But he extended his championship lead, didn't he?
Yeah, Charles Leclerc will be absolutely livid, and I think we heard that over team radio because Ferrari completely bottled it, and it kind of reminded me. I don't know if anyone's seen, because it was a bad film. I'm not going to lie to you. Cars 2. It's the weirdest little tangent I can go off.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting analogy for Cars 2, but yeah, rather bizarre strategy. Obviously, he had to wait behind Sainz whilst he was double stacking in the box, but yeah, very strange. And his luck in Monaco does not continue. Right, time to go across the pond and to IndyCar. And of course, we had the absolutely iconic month of May, including the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500, alongside the Indy Grand Prix, and yet another treat for IndyCar as we got the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama on the opening day of the month. And that resulted in a Pato O'Ward win. The Ninja got past VK, an incredible move round the outside at turn 4, to seal his first victory on a road course, which means he now has a victory on a road course, a street course, and an oval. Alex Palou is looking strong in the championship. He finished P2 after jumping Rinus VK, who was the pole sitter in the stops, and those two rounded out the podium. One of the bizarre moments of the race, Romain Grosjean collides with Graham Rahal, and it kind of seems he deliberately hits him in some ways. The first one was obviously accidental, and he kind of drives into the side of him. And Grosjean and Rahal were sharing some interesting words after the race about it, the incident. I think it was a bit bizarre move from Grosjean. But yeah, they had their arguments. And then just 2 weeks later, we went off to Indianapolis to kick off the month of May traditions. But she started off on the road course. And to say this race was crazy is probably an understatement. It is one of the most remarkable races I have seen in any motorsport ever. Colton Herta won it, but that does not tell you the full story at all. It was wet to dry to wet again. And Herta gambled on the slicks early on, and he got the lead after an incredible first lap, which saw Pato O'Ward go from 5th to 1st. And then Herta has made one of the most ridiculous saves of all time whilst chasing O'Ward for the lead. Hopefully, Michael will put a video up here. And it was honestly insane. He's lost the car completely, and he manages to put it in a straight line, and the next corner he goes past O'Ward to take the lead. It is truly incredible. I don't know how he's done it. It's one of the best car control I've ever seen, and that is only some of the weirdness that happened this race. I can't go into all the details because we may as well make another podcast just for the race alone. It was so crazy. But all we need to know is Simon Pagenaud ended up 2nd, and Will Power continued the streak of finishing in the top 4 every race by finishing 3rd, which put him in the championship lead after Alex Palou, Scott McLaughlin, and Joseph Newgarden all dropped points in their championship push. Pato O'Ward had a bit of a disaster of a race at some points and brilliance at other points. We saw he took the lead fairly early on, and then later on he spun right in front of his teammate Felix Rosenqvist. And then when Aaron McLaren SP left him out on slicks in monsoon conditions, it was interesting to see him try and handle the Indianapolis road course on slicks. He spun and he was leading on the slicks, but he was told to pit fairly enough because it was fairly dangerous, which put him way down the order. And he lost a significant amount of points there. And in the race, I think there was 470 something overtakes. That's all you need to know about how crazy it was. Callum Ilott, some of you may be glad to know, he finished 8th in his best IndyCar finish. And now, the main event, the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. And we started off the week after the Indy Grand Prix for Scott Dixon to take a record-breaking 5th Indianapolis 500 pole. And a truly incredible run, an average of 234 miles an hour over 4 laps of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The quickest time for a pole run ever. Truly remarkable to watch. It is peak Scott Dixon. And the race itself, a week after Dixon, he hit trouble. He sped he was cruising to victory until he sped in the pit box, which gave him a penalty, and he was running right to the back. Alex Palou started 2nd. He had his own troubles. He ran out of fuel and had to go for emergency repairs, which put him at the back. And then we were left with Ericsson, O'Ward, and Rosenqvist to challenge for the victory in the Indianapolis 500.
For me, the thing that stood out in the 500, it's only the second ever 500 I've watched, it was a textbook victory from Chip Ganassi Racing. Right from the start, the first quarter of the race, it was Dixon and Palou trading the lead, just conserving their fuel out in front. At first, VK seemed like he was going to be able to threaten them, but obviously that sudden crash put him out of contention out of the race, and it kind of left them in the clear. Obviously, threw up a bit of jeopardy when both Palou and Dixon received their penalties. Very unfortunate for both of them, but luckily for Ganassi, Marcus Ericsson was just waiting in the wings in 4th and 3rd throughout the race, really, and he picked up where they left off, and he was right at the front. Obviously, went on to win, handled traffic really well, and took the win ahead of McLaren's Pato O'Ward. And then Tony Kanaan as well. He was very impressive. Looked like he might be challenging for the win right at the end. Had some very, very good pace before the final Chip Ganassi, Jimmy Johnson, brought out the red flag with 6 to go.
Yeah, what an ending it was to the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. Ericsson jumped O'Ward and Rosenqvist in the stops. He looked like he was cruising towards a victory until his teammate Jimmy Johnson crashed and brought out the red flag, with just 5 laps to go. And it looked like we'd have an Ericsson O'Ward shootout for their first win in Indianapolis, and boy did we get that. Final lap, O'Ward has a run into turn 1, but he stays behind the Swede. And then when Sage Karam crushed in turn 2, that would prove the end of the race, and Marcus Ericsson won his first ever Indianapolis 500 with Pat O'Ward and Tony Kanaan finishing out the podium in probably the best Indianapolis 500 I've seen in a couple of years. It was a thrilling race, a thrilling outcome, and that's what we just love about Indianapolis 500. It doesn't compare to any race in the world, and that is what makes it such an amazing event.
Next up to the Formula E, just the one round, obviously a double header there at Berlin. The Tempelhof Airport has been a staple on the FE calendar since the inaugural season. Obviously, the 2020 season, 6 races held there and 3 track layouts in just 9 days. In that first race, right away, we had quali drama on the Saturday morning. In the semi-final, Mahindra's Alex Sims and Cheetah's Jean-Eric Verne set the exact same time in the semi-finals, but Sims set the lap first and got the place in the finals. He went on to qualify second, but the Cheetah boys were far from happy. Obviously, when you go out on track in the knockout stages of qualifying, it's decided you have no control over that, and you could see why Verne was incredibly frustrated with the decision. Despite this, he went on to finish second, as Mortara, who grabbed pole from Sims, went on to win the race. A textbook solid victory for the Swissman, who was an early contender for the championship, fell off a bit, but has definitely launched himself back in contention. Stoffel van Dorn, the championship leader, finished third, and on day 2 it was yet another Mortara pole. This time, however, wasn't the win that he got on day 1. It was a Nick de Vries win, his first since the Diriyah opener. Mortara finished second though, so first and second with a double pole in Berlin. Very, very impressive stuff. Has launched him right back up into the championship fight. And Van Dorn again was P2. Some very, very solid performances from both Mortara and Van Dorn. There's a reason why they are both championship protagonists. In terms of news though, 2 very, very big announcements for next season. The Gen 3 era, we will have McLaren on the grid. We've suspected it for a long time. We were waiting the announcement. It came out just after the Monaco Grand Prix. The Monaco E-Prix, I should say. And also, Apt's Formula E announcement. They are returning to the series after just 1 year out. They just couldn't get enough and they wanted to come back for more. 2 giants. One, a motorsport giant. The other, a Formula E giant. And it'll be very excited to see them back on the grid next season.
That rule is bizarre, the qualifying rule. Sims had no other choice apart from to set his lap first. So why is he allowed to go first? I do understand that this outcome was probably not prepared for, but there's so many better ways to do it. Why can't it just be the person who set the quickest time in group qualifying, which is Verne? So anyway, that was rather bizarre. And obviously, the McLaren Formula E news, it is great. McLaren are just expanding further and further. They have operations in F1, they have operations in IndyCar, they have operations in Extreme E, and they have operations in Formula E. And it's really good to see so many different categories they're racing. And although this could be unlikely, we may see more people coming to F1 through unnatural rays. So we could have a Formula E driver coming to the McLaren F1 team, or you could have someone like Pat O'Ward go from their IndyCar team to their Formula 1 team in it. And I don't know if it's just me, but I'm kind of finding the traditional Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1 route a bit boring. I want to see different types of drivers and different styles of drivers coming into Formula 1. And that'd be really cool if we see a team like McLaren who can operate in both kind of form now. So Mercedes have kind of done that with Nick de Vries. Obviously, it's unlikely he's going to get a Mercedes anytime soon. But yeah, I think it's definitely really cool that they're going into Formula E.
MotoGP got underway in the month of May with the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez. It was a very interesting race with Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio Quartararo dominating, and they were at one point, I think, 10 seconds out in front of the rest of the field, which is so amazing to watch because, of course, we've lost Valentino Rossi, a previous legend of the sport. Marc Marquez is slipping away, which we'll touch on later. And to see two legends, modern day legends, going at it now, 10 seconds out in front of the rest, two different manufacturers, it's very, very special. And especially special, which is a sentence I don't think I would say, because Fabio Quartararo and Yamaha have had one of the most difficult seasons of all time. And Fabio has been able to drag that little bike up to very consistent results in the top 5 every single race, if not on the podium. And yeah, they were just in a world of their own at the Spanish Grand Prix. Staying in Europe, we move over to the Le Mans Bugatti circuit in France, where Enea Bastianini won his 3rd race of the season with Gresini Ducati, which is just incredible because that team a couple of years back were right at the back. And now, yeah, Bastianini has brought them right to the front. Bagnaia crashed out after winning the previous round in Spain. He crashed out of France, which was a big shame. That is the tricky thing with the Ducati is that it's such a heavy bike that if the tyre wear gets too much for the rider, it just slips away and they get absolutely thrown around because it's such a that Ducati is a monster down the straight, which makes it very hard to handle in the corners. We also had Yamaha with their struggle. Quartararo at the beginning of the race dropped like a stone right to the back of the field, and he did manage to come back, but the rest of the Yamahas, throughout the season, they've just been right at the back. Quartararo is carrying that team absolutely. We then had arguably MotoGP's greatest race of the season with Mugello, the Italian Grand Prix, which Bagnaia won again. So he seems to be having a similar season to Max Verstappen, where every race he's been finishing, he's winning, but he's also crashing out of the other ones. So it's a very strange season he is having. Espargaro had yet another podium, 3 third places in the month of May, and that's 4 podiums in a row overall. Aprilia will be delighted. The whole team are just, they spent years and years of pain, and they've finally got to the front. He is now a contender for the World Championship. He just needs to maintain this consistency because that is absolutely key. VR46 are a rookie team, and they had an exceptional showing at the first Mugello for them. They were challenging with Bezzecchi and Marini for the podiums throughout the first sort of half, 3/4 of the race, but unfortunately just dropped back towards the end there. And it's a shame, especially because Bezzecchi is his rookie season in MotoGP. So to be battling for the podium already at your home Grand Prix is, exceptional. And of course, how could we forget that Fabio Quartararo on a Yamaha, which has no power, on a power circuit with Mugello, he somehow drags that to a podium. I simply do not know how he did that. And because of it, he is the championship leader, despite not winning a single race in May. But I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and Marc Marquez is taking yet again more time out of MotoGP.
Now then, the main top 10 from the month of May, the best 10 drivers, in our opinions, of course, from the very busy month of May. The first ever touring car driver on the list at number 10, ladies and gentlemen. British Touring Car Championships Josh Cook. Owen, our resident British Touring Car Championship fan, tell us more.
Yeah, well, Josh Cook has had an excellent month with 4 wins in 6 races in the British Touring Car Championship, and he holds a championship lead. And the only reason that he probably wouldn't have got the other 2 wins is because what the BTCC does is a reverse grid race every weekend. So yeah, he didn't really have much of an opportunity to win the other 2. So 4 in 6 is over 50%, which is quite the statistic.
We've had our first British Touring Car Championship driver, and how about another new series? We have Dino Beganovic of the Formula Renault European Championship by Alpine. And we've had 3 rounds in Monza, Imola, and Monaco, with Imola and Monaco taking place this month. And Beganovic has finished first or second in every single race so far this season. A first in Monaco and a first in Imola, and a second as well in the opposite race of the weekend.
He struggled in his debut year in Freca last season, but he's obviously been first and second every race so far this season. As a member of the Ferrari Driver Academy, do we think, boys, Dino Beganovic will make it to F1?
Well, being that Ferrari Driver Academy is obviously a particularly helpful aid, they've been they've been okay at getting drivers to F1. Obviously, Charles Leclerc is the main man, but they do have a lot of other talent in their ranks, but they are starting to go away, basically. So Callum Ilot's moved to IndyCar, Robert Schwartzman's on kind of a hiatus year. So those kind of challenging for an F1 seat are being minimised. So it may help someone like Dino's chances to make it to F1. He's obviously somewhat talented. Obviously, we don't know where his path will take him, but he's doing well with Prema. We'll see where he gets. We'll see where he is at the end of the season. I'd imagine we'll see him in F3 next year, and we'll see where his career takes him.
I have to say, I was a bit sceptical of Dino Beganovic. He got picked up by Ferrari back when he was in Italian F4, and in his first Formula regional campaign last season, he wasn't necessarily what you'd expect from a driver backed by Ferrari. But you cannot deny the talent that boy has got, finishing first and second every single race. Next up then, number 8 on our list, Formula E's Edoardo Mortara. We touched on him earlier in the Formula E section. Double pole anywhere is impressive, and then when you convert that into a race win and another podium in second, it warrants a place on the list 100%. Very, very impressive stuff from the Swissman. Another win to his collection, and yet more poles this season. He's been in I can't remember the stat exactly, he's been in the finals or the semi-finals of the qualifying knockout stage every race weekend so far this season. Very, very impressive. Incredible consistency from Edo. With the Venturi team that looks very, very quick this year, he may go all the way and take the championship. Missed out last season due to an unfortunate incident off the start line in Berlin. But this season, he's looking a lot more promising. Number 7 then, as well as the Touring Car Championship being the first. Number 7 on our list is DTM's Sheldon van der Linde. Similarly to Edoardo Mortara, he had an impeccable weekend, but unlike Mortara, he got the win in both races. Sheldon van der Linde, the South African, driving for Schubert Motorsport BMW in DTM, took a double win in the Lausitz-Ring. Absolutely unstoppable throughout. Came a little bit close to losing it late on in race 2, but he was never really in doubt. A double win in DTM, which is always impressive, puts him right at the top of the championship after the first 2 rounds.
On the brink of the top 5, at number 6 is Pecco Bagnaia, who has displayed excellent riding skills this month with 2 wins in 3 races, and the only one he didn't win was because that bike is just a monster and it throws him off at every opportunity. So Pecco Bagnaia is at number 6.
The top 5 then, in F1, the double point scoring places. It's F2's Filip Drugovich, a very, very interesting character this season. But in May, At Spain and Monaco, 4 races, 3 wins. At Spain, a double win. He got a sprint race win there back with MP in 2020. He's made that the double, which is very, very rare in F2. Like Mortara, like Van der Linde, very, very impressive stuff to get 2 podiums, 2 poles, 2 wins, whatever you want to say. Very, very impressive stuff from the Brazilian. But he took it one step further with a pole and feature race win at the iconic streets of Monaco. 3 out of 4 wins in an MP car, which is usually a midfield car. The Brazilian is top of the championship after 5 rounds. It's incredible stuff. Nobody really expected him to come off the blocks in this incredible and surprising fashion. But the question I put to you two is, will he make it to F1? Will he even get the title? He's obviously not affiliated with any driver academy, so that might hamper his chances. But do we think he can get to F1?
I think obviously this season he's got to focus on the task at hand. There's 14 F2 rounds. We've only done 5 of them thus far. But he is looking in a good position. There are many people who I personally thought would be higher up the standings. Theo Porsche is obviously in second. He's still got a good chance of title. But people like Yuri Vips, Liam Lawson had a really bad weekend for him. And I really thought he would be really challenging up at the top. So far, it's so good for DRUGOVICH. I thought he would fall off a bit, but his form is staying consistent. Obviously, we still got 9 more rounds. We don't know what happened in that period. But I think he's certainly in a very good position to do so. Will he make it to F1? It's difficult to do now without a driver academy. It is very, very difficult unless you are very, very rich. There's not many places without academies. There's obviously Aston Martin, but we believe they're looking at Mick Schumacher for a seat. That could leave Haas, but that might be controlled by Ferrari. They may need more income. There's obviously McLaren if Ricciardo decides to go, but they might have Pierre Gasly or Pato O'Ward or Colton Herta on their list. So there's not much space for DRUGOVICH to look around. We've also seen Piastri last year. He couldn't find an F1 seat, even with an academy. So it's going to be really tough for DRUGOVICH to get a seat. We'll obviously see where he ends up before the end of the season. But yeah, it's going to be a very tough ask.
Felipe is obviously a very talented driver, but unfortunately in F1, talent isn't always the thing that decides whether you will make it or not. He flourished with MP in his debut season in 2020, hinted at there being some interest from some academies, but didn't end up signing with any. Hasn't ever actually been with a driver academy. He burst onto the scene in 2020. He struggled a little bit last season with a new team with Virtuosi, but he's returned to the MP team that gave him his debut in F2, and he has absolutely shone. It would be a real shame if he didn't get an F1 seat if he goes on to get the title, but unfortunately, if he can't find a driver academy or some funding, that might just be the case.
Well, Felipe DRUGOVICH, what a month he's had, and he's only 5th, so you must be wondering who on earth is in this top 4. But this top 4 have all had incredible months in their own right, and we're going to start off with the man who won the most incredible race in motorsport, Marcus Ericsson, the winner of the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. He didn't have a great race in Barber. He only came 4th in the GMR Grand Prix, but that is all overshadowed by his epic victory in the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. We didn't see him at the front for most of the race. He was lurking in around 4th or 5th. It didn't look like he was going to challenge for the win. And when Dixon and Palou hit their problems, we saw him in the front with O'Ward and Rosenqvist. And when he got through the traffic and O'Ward couldn't, it looked like victory was coming straight to him. Obviously, his teammate Jimmy Johnson gave him a bit of a scare. And when Pato O'Ward looked to have had it into turn 1, he may have been nervous then. But he crossed the yard of bricks first for an iconic first Indianapolis 500 victory. He got the milk, he got all the traditions, and he won, obviously, his first Indianapolis 500. But we've got to say, Charles Leclerc is still the teammate from 2018. I don't think Ericsson was the one we were expecting to win one of motorsport's famous races on the 29th of May. But he was the one who did it. Leclerc can do it in Monaco. Instead, he did it in Indianapolis. But how do you think he's turned his career around, lads, since he's left Formula One?
He's frankly just been exceptional. I mean, winning this is obviously the highlight, but at the end of 2018, I don't think anyone really predicted that he was going to have such a great career coming out of Formula One, because usually that's where a lot of drivers fall off the radar. But no, he's absolutely shone and he's delivered, and he's been rewarded with an Indy 500 victory.
Obviously, after 2018, you just knew throughout the season Leclerc was getting consistent, amazing results in that Alfa Romeo Sauber, which wasn't, of course, not even probably a midfield car. It was probably more of a backmarker than that. And you just knew throughout the season that Ericsson was not going to stay in F1 for much longer. Landed a seat out in IndyCar with Chip Ganassi. At first, not too impressive, but during this season and last season, he has upped the ante. His first ever win last season in Nashville after being airborne early on in the race, and now he sees himself on top of the IndyCar standings. One of the, apart from F1, probably the biggest series in the world, and he finds himself top of the standings after winning the 106th Indy 500.
I've got to say, IndyCar is such a great career alternative for people who don't find themselves in an F1. So we've seen Romain Grosjean, he's had a really good career out of there, but I think it's got to be said that just because a driver isn't good in F1 and they do well in IndyCar, that doesn't show how good of a series IndyCar is. We have professional drivers, brilliant drivers like Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, and talents who genuinely have a shot at Formula One like Pato O'Ward and Colton Herta. And seeing drivers who maybe didn't perform like we could have seen them do are showing what they're about in IndyCar. It's such a brilliant series, and it's great to see more and more European talent move there. We've seen Christian Lundgaard move there. We've seen Callum Ilott move there. It's really becoming a great career option. I'm so glad we're seeing loads of diversity in the series. This is what's so great about IndyCar. You've got Jimmy Johnson from NASCAR, and Romain Grosjean has been in F1 for 10 years. How different could that be in the motorsport world? And that's what makes it so great of a series. This is why IndyCar is just unlike any other thing in the world.
Beginning our podium ceremony is third place, Checo Perez, simply because at Miami he ended up fourth with a pretty big car issue, which kind of relegated him to fourth, and he couldn't challenge Carlos Sainz for anything higher. In Spain, he had a great race, but unfortunately team orders really shot down any chances of a win for him, and he ended up P2. But he struck back in Monaco on Sunday with a glorious victory, one that he will remember for the rest of his life. And he, of course, celebrated with a front flip into the Red Bull pool, keeping the tradition set by Mark Webber and Daniel Ricciardo, which is very beautiful to see. But, guys, I want to know, do you think Sergio Perez is going to be a legitimate championship contender this year?
I don't think it's going to be easy, especially against the likes of Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. Can we see him there? I don't know. It's going to be tight between now and the end of the season. But his form has been good. We've seen him get, was it 3 second places so far this year? And obviously the win in Monaco. That is a loss of points. But personally, I can't see him hanging up this form. What seems to be the case, he's kind of picking up the scraps from where Leclerc and Verstappen drop points. And you can't rely on that to win you a championship. On most days, he doesn't have the pace to beat Verstappen. And obviously, Red Bull will prefer Verstappen as a championship contender. So for me, I don't think he's going to be quite there. He's going to be significantly better than he was last year, and I think he should be able to beat Sainz. But personally, I can't see him near the top of the standings towards the end of the season. Well, we saw Mexico win one bit of a Triple Crown, and Pato O'Ward made it so close to making it 2 of the Triple Crown victories for Mexico. And although that didn't happen, he still makes P2 on our list. We started off the month with an excellent win in Barber, an excellent move on Rinus VeeKay to take the lead of the race, which he held. His GMR Grand Prix was absolutely crazy. He could have won it, but he ended up near the back, but that wasn't Pato's fault at all, really. He was battling at the front for the majority of the race. He made a mistake, 1 or 2 mistakes, spinning into Rosenqvist, for example. But he was nearly right for most of the race. Even when he spun, he gained all the positions back really quickly. And McLaren's bizarre strategy to leave him out of slicks just cost him so much in the end. But even so, it was still a spectacular drive. We saw his first lap going from 5th to 1st with ease was truly, truly remarkable. And even though he obviously finished way down the order, it was still a really good result. And it just showed what Pato O'Ward's about, battling at the front, not being afraid to get his elbows out, and it was really good. And obviously, the Indy 500, I think he was personally a bit unlucky not to win this race. Obviously, Palou and Dixon made their mistakes in some ways. Pato kept it cool. Was at the front the entire race. He drove really well. Made an incredible move on Dixon and Daly off the restart. But it was just a bit unfortunate that Ericsson got him in the pit stops. But it was still an incredible month for O'Ward. Without doubt, he showed what he's about as a driver. He shows that he wants to be in F1. And he's just signed a contract extension with Aaron McLaren SP until 2025. But will he make it to F1? That is a debate surrounding it right now. What do you guys think?
Personally, I don't think it's a question of whether McLaren will want him. I think it's a question of whether he'll want to go to F1. He seems very, very comfortable in IndyCar. The contract extension to 2026, obviously, with the McLaren teams, that could be carried over to F1. But I think he's doing well in IndyCar. He's yet to win it, and I think that will be top of his list, actually. I think Pato O'Ward will want to succeed in IndyCar, either win the 500 or win the championship, and then he can head over to F1, being known as the IndyCar champion, the new hotshot, instead of the guy who showed a good sign of winning but wasn't able to. Obviously, Ricciardo's not performing well, so I think Pato would be a great alternative, but I think maybe he, in his head, wants to prove himself more on the IndyCar stage before he heads over to F1, which has a much bigger global eye on it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And when you consider how Zach Brown has been talking about Daniel Ricciardo recently, all the signs are pointing towards potentially a replacement at McLaren. And Pato is a great driver to replace Daniel Ricciardo. He's showed his talent time and time again. But yeah, I fully agree that he might want to spend a little bit more time in IndyCar.
I remember Zach Brown saying that for O'Ward to get an F1 seat, he needs to win the Indy 500 and the IndyCar series. I think, although he hasn't won the 500, it's hard to say that it's an event you have to win to make Formula 1, because it's obviously an oval, it's completely different. But an Indianapolis 500 does change your life. It is more significant than an IndyCar series. And I think someone like Pato really does want an Indy 500 to declare himself a success in his career. Many IndyCar drivers don't consider themselves a success until they win the Indy 500. So obviously, we don't know what he wants to do that line. But he is involved with F1. We know that with his new contract, he's got more testing opportunities with McLaren. Will he get a free practice in Mexico? We'll obviously see till then. But Zach Brown and McLaren organisation really love Pato as a driver, and they always speak about him so highly and wanting him to get to F1. Obviously, IndyCar will be the unconventional route, but we'll see. We'll see. I think he's got a good shot. I don't think we'll see him next year, maybe in 2024. But again, we'll see where his path takes him. This season's going to be so crucial into proving why he should be an F1 driver. But yeah, we'll see them. On to number one. You may have guessed who it is, but we have put Max Verstappen as number one. He won 2 of the 3 F1 races this month. He won in Miami, a fairly comfortable victory after he got past Sainz and Leclerc early on. And although he did make a mistake in Spain, which was put down to a gust of wind, but that is a combination of driver error as well, he still won the race. Obviously, Leclerc retired, but it was still a win. And the results are what matters in Formula 1. Monaco, he didn't quite seem on the pace during the weekend, to be honest. But he still got third. He still took advantages of the opportunities he got, and he was probably quite unlucky with Schumacher's red flag, to be honest, and the first red flag. We know how good Verstappen is in the wet, and if in the monsoon conditions we had at one point, I think Verstappen definitely could have been challenging more up front. He's such a brilliant driver in the wet. Yeah, and obviously he got P3 by jumping Charles Leclerc in the pits. Obviously, Ferrari had their own down. They basically caused their own downfall, but he still took advantage of opportunity. He held Leclerc off. And did exactly what he needed to do to get P3. And P1, and P3 obviously make him very worthy of the P1 ranking in our list. He's had a really good month. He looked down and out of the championship by Australia, but since Imola, he's really had a resurgence and put himself in the lead of the standings, which is really important. And obviously, we saw Monaco last year. He took lead of the standings then. But do we think he's been a better driver last year, or he's been a better driver this year? Boys, what do you think?
Well, I don't think he's necessarily been faster or better. I think he's been more mature. I think that's the big thing with Max Verstappen this season. Obviously, he's done a lot of maturing in the time he's been F1. This is his, 7th or 8th year now, and he's only 23. Well, I think when he first got to Red Bull in that 2016 to 2018 period, he was very, very aggressive, getting involved in incidents, crashing a lot. But I think in 2020 and 2021, he's really changed himself, and he's a lot more mature. Obviously, when the title fight got quite heated between himself and Lewis Hamilton, and quite tight towards the closing stages, you did see him making frustrating moves, being a little bit lackadaisical, and probably doing things that weren't quite fair. But I think this season, he's handled himself very well. Last season, if he'd been at the point he was at after Australia, I think you would have seen him making desperate moves, getting caught up alongside Leclerc in accidents. But I think this season he's handled himself very well, and to see him fight back the way he's done has been very, very impressive. And he's shown that he's more than the young, aggressive hotshot a lot of fans like to see him as.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think especially this season, once he's won the championship, as he did last year, he seems a lot more relaxed. He's not up against a very ridiculously dominant car in that of the Mercedes that was last year. He has a fairly equal car to the Ferrari, so it's a much more balanced championship fight, which means that he can take his time, he can relax a little bit more than he could last season. Dan, what do you think?
I've got to say, I agree with Ollie. He's matured so much as a driver. He's not making these desperate lunges or these stupid mistakes that we saw creep into his game last season. I think, obviously, he still is prone to a bit of immaturity. What we saw with Spain in the DRS issue, and he was not pleased about that. But he's composed himself really well. He's obviously understood that there's been troubles. Red Bull aren't as reliable as they want to be, but he's kept his head down and he's got points when he's needed them. I think now he's got that championship, the pressure is off his shoulders, but the expectations are decreasing. That really helps him as a driver to be more relaxed. He doesn't have to be at the front all the time. He can, like in Monaco, he accepted third. He didn't have to make any stupid lunges or anything like that. He accepted that he was going to get third, and third was a good result, and he extended the championship lead. That was the important thing to him. He's playing the long game more, which I think last year it was very focused on the next race. We've got to win the next race. But now he's taking a more long-term approach and looking at the championship as a whole and realising what events might be good, what events might not be good. And I think that is the important thing for Max Verstappen if he wants to carry on, defend his championship crown.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we also saw this with Sebastian Vettel quite regularly, is that once he got that first championship with Red Bull in 2010, in 2011 he just dominated. In 2012, I mean, it went down to the wire, but he still was exceptionally quick and obviously won that championship. And in 2013, he also dominated. It's just something about these younger drivers. Vettel was also extremely young in his Red Bull days. And yeah, they just seem very hot-headed when they first come into the team. But once they get that first championship, they learn to calm down, control themselves. And it's been very interesting to watch Max this year. And he's had that incredible record of getting on the podium at every race he's finished as well.
Yeah, I do think that is really important. We've seen many young drivers like Alonso and Vettel. We've seen them defend their crowns fairly soon. And can Verstappen win the championship this year? His experience in the championship fight may help him against Leclerc and Perez. You obviously don't have that experience battling in the front. I think that's going to be really important coming into the season. We're seeing him play a long game now, which is part of the championship experience he's had. I think that's going to be very important towards the end of the season. Now that is the top 10 over, but let's look forward to the next month. What have we got F1 wise, Owen?
Oh, well, guys, if you're taking exams right now, first of all, good luck, but also you're in for a treat this month because June has got some excellent racing on. We've got Baku, which has delivered some classic F1 races recently, and also the return of the Gilles Villeneuve circuit at Canada, which finally returns from the last time we saw it, which was 2019.
And IndyCar is back. We're straight off to Detroit. No waiting about. We're straight off to Detroit. First weekend in June. Only the one event this year has obviously been traditionally a doubleheader, but Detroit has been a really good track for racing in recent years, and obviously this is the last event on the Belle Isle circuit before we move downtown for 2023. So hopefully the Detroit Belle Isle circuit ends off with a bang, and just to prove it, we have an event at Road America as well, one of IndyCar's now traditional circuits, which is going to be brilliant to see.
June will be the whole package. You've got a bit of F1, a bit of IndyCar, and the inaugural Jakarta E-Prix in Formula E. Very, very promising pictures coming out of Jakarta. It looks like they put a really, really good event on over there. It's good to see Indonesia promoting its sporting involvement, and you've seen them get involved in MotoGP with the Mandalika Grand Prix, and now on the Formula E scene as well with the Jakarta E-Prix, which I am very, very excited for.
Right, that's just about it for the podcast this month. We obviously hope you enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed, and please feel free to comment your top 10 in the comments below. Let's see what you guys thought was our top 10. Were we right? Were we wrong? You guys are the verdicts, I guess. Don't forget to subscribe to the DiveBomb YouTube. It's fairly easy. Just press the red button and press the bell to get notifications of when our next podcast comes out, which will be, hopefully early in July. And don't forget to follow our Instagram and Twitter at Project DiveBomb. We will see you next month.